The Swiss Family Robinson, English Literature, Grade 5. Hello, my dear children. Before we start our lesson, let's refresh our minds from Chapter 1, Ship on the Rocks. Children, can you remember the things they gathered from the ship? Mr. David Robinson, he found food and water, Fritz, guns, gunpowder and shots. Ernest, a box of tools. Jack, two big dogs. Mrs. Robinson and little Francis, they found some animals like a cow, a donkey, two goats, a pig, two sheep, some hens, and some ducks. Now let's move on to the lesson. The Island, Chapter 2. The characters of this chapter: Mr. David Robinson, he is the father and the narrator. Mrs. Robinson, she is the mother. Fritz, the eldest son. Ernest, the second son. Jack, the third son. Francis, the youngest son. They were all awake at sunrise. Mr. David Robinson called the children together and said, "We must feed the animals. I hope we'll be able to come back and bring them later. Now gather together everything that will be useful to us." So they took guns, gunpowder, and shot. Each carried a bag full of food, and they took some cooking pots, hammer, saw, knives, nails, axes, a sailcloth to make a tent, and a sail for the boat. The hens seemed sad at being left, so they brought them with them. "The ducks and the dogs can swim behind the boat," said Mr. David Robinson. At the last minute, Mrs. Robinson came carrying a big bag. The family landed successfully on the island. Then they began to bring the things from the boat. They set the hens free. Then Mr. Robinson cut some long branches from the trees and fixed them in the ground and put the sailcloth over them and made a tent. Then Mr. David Robinson said to the children, "Now go and bring some dry grass for our beds." While they were doing this, Mr. David Robinson got some big stones and made a fireplace for Mrs. Robinson to do the cooking. Fritz took a gun and set off along the river bank. Ernest went to the right along the shore, and Jack went to the left to get shellfish. Mr. David Robinson went to carry more things from the boat to the land. Suddenly, he heard Jack shouting. He took an axe and ran to help him. He found Jack standing in water up to his knees. "Come, father, come quickly. I've caught something really big." Then Mr. Robinson said, "All right, bring it here." Then Jack said, "I can't. It has caught me." Then Mr. David Robinson struck the lobster with his axe and set Jack free. It had caught only his clothing, so he was not hurt. "Well, Jack is the first boy who has found something that we can eat," said Mr. David Robinson. Ernest found some shellfish that are good to eat, but he needed help in getting them because they were stuck hard to the rocks. Then Mrs. Robinson said, "The food is ready." She looked at the pot of food. "How shall we eat it? We can't put our hands in. We can't take out the liquid with a knife. We need spoons." "But we haven't got any spoons," said Mrs. Robinson. "We can have shells if you will come and help me to get them," said Ernest. So Jack and Ernest went to get shellfish. Meantime, Fritz came laughing and showed what he had got. "It looks rather like a pig, but it isn't a pig. I saw it moving in the grass. Sometimes it was digging to get food out of the ground, and sometimes it sat up and seemed to be washing its face." Ernest came back, followed by Jack bringing shellfish. "Let me see it." "Yes, yes, I think I've seen a picture of it in a book. It isn't really like a pig. Its teeth are different and its skin is softer. I think it's an animal called an agouti," said Ernest. "Ernest is right. It is an agouti. It lives in holes in trees. It's very good to eat," said Mr. David Robinson. Jack was trying to open a shellfish with a knife, which he couldn't open it. So Mr. David Robinson said, "Put the shellfish near the hot fire and they'll open without your help." So they sat down to have their meal. First, they ate shellfish so as to use the shells as spoons for the other food. Then Mrs. Robinson said, "But we haven't got any plates." Then Ernest said, "I have a plate," showing a very big shell that he found on the shore. "There are lots of these shells where I found this one." Then Mr. Robinson asked, "Then why didn't you think of others and bring plates for all of us? Give that shell to the dogs and eat out of the pot like the rest of us." The dogs, which the children had named Turk and Flora, finished their meal very quickly, but they were still hungry. While they were eating, they began to pull pieces of the agouti. Fritz saw this and was very angry. He hit the dogs with his gun. He hit them so hard that he broke part of the gun. "Fritz, you are the oldest and the other boys watch what you do and do the same. You have taught them to be angry without a reason and to hurt animals which meant no wrong." "I'm sorry, father. Forgive me." "Tell the dogs that you are sorry and ask their forgiveness." Fritz took a piece of bread in each hand and was soon back leading the two dogs behind him. The sun was going down when they finished their meal. Then Mrs. Robinson opened the bag that she had brought from the ship and began to throw handfuls of corn to the hens. Then Mr. David Robinson stopped her. "I'm very glad that you have brought the corn. That's very good. But we mustn't give it to the hens. We must use it as seed and grow corn to make bread. The hens can have other food." The hens went up on the top of the tent. The ducks went in among the tall grasses on the edge of the stream. They loaded their guns and laid them at their sides. Then they said their evening prayers and went into the tent. Let's practice. It's time to make smart choices. Rule number 1. Follow the directions quickly. Turn to page number 70. Question number 1. Where did the family land? Question number 2. How did the narrator make a tent? Question number 3. What had caught Jack? Number 4. What was the animal Fritz found? I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please complete the student notes of Literature, Chapter 2, The Island. Goodbye.